Hello, hockey fans. Welcome to our coach of the first half episode here in our series of thoughts, recollections, and surmisings on the first half of the USPHL season. It's a working title. We're still trying to figure it out. But one thing we have figured out are our coaches of the first half. And Dan, since I kicked things off, why don't you start with your coach of the first half of the NCDC?
Yeah, Lucas, and there's a lot of familiar faces you can go to for this one, right? And as you look through the NCDC ranks, but I gotta go to first place. We talked about it as my surprising storyline of the first half in the NCDC, the Monarchs being in first. Look at what Coach Clint Edinger has done in New Hampshire right now with his team atop the Norris Division, ahead of the Boston Junior Bruins with a negative goal differential. He said to us on an interview earlier this year on the bench during a game that they want to be the hardest working team in the league. If they're not the best, if they're not the most talented, they'll be the hardest working, and the talent will come. The best will rise itself to the top at that point. I'll tell you what, this guy does it with a little dash of blueberry in his coffee. This guy brings the jolt to the rink. And to see what he's done, this organization has had so much to overcome in the last 2 years and so much heartache, so much pain that still sits there, right? As they work through the regrowth now and the rebirth of this organization. And it is amazing. And it is awe-inspiring to see what Coach Edinger and what those boys have done in New Hampshire, what that whole community has done to band together and kind of live on in that Fruit Strong mentality to put together a title contending team. And I would not be surprised if all of that and Coach Clint Edinger find their way to the championship game. I mean, Lucas, this guy, you want to talk about a coach of the year or coach of the first half earning mentality? He also did an interview with you on the bench, ice side, during a game with you as Macho Man Randy Savage.
He did. And you know what? I want to commend both him and Coach Jim Hankel of the Connecticut Junior Rangers because they were understandably skeptical. But I think we're both relatively impressed with the wrestling and hockey knowledge I brought to it. But I think Coach Edinger has done such a good job. You're right, Dan. I mean, they're sitting in first place right now in the North Division, and they're doing it their way, right? It's that Monarchs brand of hockey that you've come to know and love. And I think they're a force to be reckoned with. And I think there's another team from the North too, and another coach from the North that I really want to recognize. And it's Dan Hodge from the Twin City Thunder. And for listeners of the show, we talk about Dan Hodge. We did a podcast interview with him, but I think the thing that's most impressive about, besides his coaching and besides the way he handles himself on the ice, is his recruitment. The way that he recruits a team every year, he manages, he sends people off to college. He brings in new guys every year. We're almost relearning an entire new roster, it seems like, every year at the NCDC level, and he still gets results. They're sitting in third place in the North right now. They've got a positive goal differential, so that defense is working hard. I love a team that plays defense at the NCDC. I love Coach Hodge.
Working hard, the opposite of Dan K, who's usually hardly working. Let's get into the coach of the first half in the Premier. There's too many teams to pick one. There's too many teams. Unfair to pick one. I picked three, Lucas. So I'll start. I got a couple of guys to talk about. First one, and his assistants on the bench may have chirped me pretty hard via my DMs before, but this guy has a brand new team to the USPHL Premier atop their division in title contending fashion, an opportunity come later this year to make the march out to nationals, the Lake Tahoe Lakers and head coach Dan Bogdan. An incredible job. It's not often that as a Dan, I recognize other Dans. I like to have supremacy over the name Dan, so I put it on the show. But this Dan, man, this ain't Dan squared. This is Dan number one. Bogdan's had a great first half. Cody Murphy of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Knights, the second year in a row, Cody's with a brand new organization in its inaugural season. The second year in a row that at the half, Cody Murphy sits atop the standings. What a job by Coach. He does it year in and year out with Coach Ray Welsh. Third up on the list. This one's a little different. I mean, obviously, we talked about how great they've been this year. But Coach Kenny Miller of the Toledo Cherokee, this is an interesting one for me because it doesn't just come from what happened record-wise, standings-wise, on the ice, right? I got a chance to be ice side on the bench when we're out in Metro covering Toledo versus Metro. And I watched Kenny Miller take on an entire period of hockey as a head coach from the bench, from in the confines of the lines there at the ice. And I have never watched somebody put together, orchestrate, maestro style, a 4-goal come from behind, tie the game up battle on enemy territory, on enemy ice, against the top team in the nation, like Coach Kenny Miller did. These three, Bogdan, Murphy, Miller, tough to compete with how good they've been this year so far.
I mean, those are great selections. They've really, it comes down to it's not always coaches that are, in first place, right? We try to dive a little deeper than that. And you find the coaches that, Dan, like you said, you witness personally the way that coach is able to really conduct his team like an orchestra, get them to a place where they can win. You talk about, Cody Murphy and Dan Bogdan, these guys that are being hugely successful right now. First year with some new teams, that's an impressive feat all its own. So, they've done a fantastic job. And Dan's supporting Dan's, that's what it is. It's all you Dan folks out there. You got to get together and help each other out.
That's it. It's the Irish in us. We're always wanting to fight. We're always wanting to put the Dukes up with, I'm Danny. No. And the whole time, Danny Boy's not even an Irish song. So what are we talking about?
Well, I've got two selections for my coach of the first half. The first one I want to go to is a team that we've talked about all year as just this, they steamroll into town, they roll over every team they find, and then they head on back to Utah, and it's Paul Taylor with the Utah Outliers, a team that has very, very quickly, Dan, gone from one of the best teams in the Premier to potentially the best team in the Premier, and they've earned that respect. The respect is not given, it is earned, and I think Coach Taylor and his Outliers have earned it. My second coach of the year, or coach of the first half, I should say, is the Potomac Patriots staff in its entirety. Because, Dan, I know this is building off something you said all year, which is that this is the year of the Patriots. And we've gotten to talk to their ownership group, their coaches, but Gratz, Matt Colcassi, Alex Gross, you scroll down and you get to everyone, including the goaltending coach, Michael Shelley, the strength and conditioning coach, Jonathan Sukis. These are guys that just have turned this Potomac team into a powerhouse in seemingly 1 year. So I think they deserve it.
I absolutely love it, Lucas. And I'll use that as a perfect transition into my two elite coaches, because I picked Gratz in the elite. We should have talked to one another, but honestly, I think it's well-deserved. I mean, you look at, you talk about overhauling, right? You talk about a Potomac team that they'll say it themselves, right? They just weren't getting wins. They weren't finding success. They've put so much of that time and effort. And we talk about it, right? You can plant the seeds, but if you plant the seed in a sidewalk and you don't water it, like, you're not getting a flower, you're not getting a plant, you ain't growing a tree. These guys are now working on growing a mighty oak, man. These guys have planted the seed. They've watered it. They've cared for it. It's in the right soil. The opportunities abound for Potomac, and Coach Gratz has created an environment where they're winning games. They're doing it the right way. And we just continue to see the scraping claw and the grittiness. Teams tend to look like their coaches. And when you look like Coach Gratz, you scare the bejesus out of me, man. It's absolutely fun to watch. And then next up, this is a guy who I've stolen from you, Lucas, it seems like, in the last year. And, he took a Charleston Colonials team last year to a title game in his first year as their coach there in the elite as the head job. And then he comes here, takes over the rush job in the elite, puts them in first place. Moscow Smules, man, a little mint julep of coaching action. This guy just can't be stopped right now.
I obviously, we've talked about the Coach Gratton, and, you can go back and listen to that podcast as well on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. But, I think I love that Moscow Smules pick, but I think it's interesting, Dan, that a guy in one off season goes from chanting about anarchy to joining and signing up with the evil empire, the Charlotte Rush. I mean,
it almost feels like Johnny Damon shaving his face and going.
Yeah, like
it really does feel that way.
Just, you go from this outlaw kind of a guy, and all of a sudden you shave the beard, you cut the hair, you throw on the pinstripes, and but the amount of respect that we have for him obviously is through the roof, and they've done such a good job. And two more coaches, Dan, that have done a really good job. First, I want to start with the Boston Junior Bruins and Coach Nevin Hamilton.
Yep.
because this Junior Bruins team at the elite level is just so good. And to have an elite team and a premier team and an NCDC team that are all so good on their own really reflects well on the coaches at those levels. And I think that we really should acknowledge that the job that Coach Nevin Hamilton has done, both in his regular games and in showcases as well. The guy's just a heck of a head coach. There's no other way to put that. And I think someone you put on the same level as that is Coach Jim Raymond with the New Jersey Hitmen. And again, it's a name that's familiar to Dan K-Show fans, but it's familiar because the Hitmen team that started out, I went out to do the first game of the season, losing to Wilkes-Barre Scranton Knights. And now you'll look at where the Hitmen are. And this is a potential title contender here from the Jersey Hitmen, going and beating teams like Charlotte, going to showcases and doing an incredible job against adversity. I think they're built the right way. They're built young, and I think they're built to win.
I love those two picks, man. We continue to go through it. Our last little short episode, Dan K shorts. As I'm wearing shorts here in Florida, Lucas, it is so hot. It's 82 degrees right now. It's unbearable. I had to bring the garbage out. I was sweating. Tough life I'm living out here this winter. We will move on to the MVPs. Remember to follow the Dan K Show, www.dankshow.com. Dan K is on the mic. It's always Hockey Night. MVPs coming up soon.